What's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. I am over the moon about a guest we have today. It's Brian Hoyer, longtime Patriots quarterback, 2 stints. He's got your early stint from 09 on, and he's got your latter stint. So as you guys sit down and watch the dynasty, we're going to get to that baby at the end here with Brian, but he's going to be able to bring us behind the scenes on both ends of a fascinating run for the New England Patriots. But first off, thank you. I saw you on Good Morning Football, and I was like, holy crap, if he's going to be this good, we got to get him on.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
So you're doing the media, and I have to ask, is the throwing career over?
No, I mean, I'm still under contract with the Raiders. So that's just kind of like we were kind of talking about before I came on. Week of the Super Bowl, they're having people Zoom and come on the show. So I had Zoomed in leading in the Super Bowl, and I got off, and they're like, "Hey, that was great. Would you want to come host on Friday?" Jason McCourty's going to Las Vegas to cover the Super Bowl. I was like, "Yeah, that would be fun." And I really enjoyed it, and they were super great to me. And then same thing last week, they asked if I wanted to come on, and it's down in New York. It's a quick trip, and I had a blast. It's fun. That show is great because it's not so analytical. It's get up there and kind of talk about a variety of different topics and have fun with it. And it was cool to be on the show with J Mac this time because, like I said, he wasn't there the first time I was there, and just to be on with a guy that you played with for a long time and have so much respect for, and to see him, it was funny. I was thinking about sitting at the table and seeing him do it. I was like, man, he is just he's a pro at this. He's so good. And I struggled reading off the teleprompter, and I'm watching him, and he's kind of creating his own things off the teleprompter. I was really impressed by sitting there with him at that table.
You know what's wild is when you think of all the former Patriots, many of whom did not have great opportunities to speak with great either frankness or the ability to get out there and say, hey, come over and talk to me. But between yourself or Jason or Gerard, who was with me, or Kyle Noy, who was with me, or Devin.
Yeah, Kyle was on the other day after me.
It's incredible. It speaks to
maybe because we hold on to it. Well, and we hold on to it for so long because, like, I kind of joked if I was with the Patriots over the past few years, I would never even accept an opportunity to do that because it would just be so frowned upon. And I think, the one thing is we learn how to deal with the media really well in New England because, Bill would always hammer us on, this is how you need to approach it. And obviously dealing with guys like you and Mike Reese, and it was a fine line of how to say the right thing, but also speak your mind. And then obviously I've played different places where it's much more lenient, and they almost encourage it. So I've kind of seen all the perspectives, but I think it does prepare you for that world.
You know what I always think I really appreciated was the fact that you did believe that we were earnestly trying to do a job that wasn't so much just flat out shit stirring, but trying to gather information so we understood, so we could comprehend what we were looking at. And you were always very respectful, and you'd give us as much intel as you could comfortably about the way the team was working. And not every day. I mean, I'm not trying to give people the idea that Brian was sitting there to sing, having confab after confab. But if you wandered over and said, hey, what's going on with this? You would go as far as you could.
Yeah, well, I think it's important to educate. We're out there playing the game. We talked about it before. Like, even in my 15 years, the game has evolved so much. And so even being in it, it's there's a new coverage there. Someone's copycatting off of this. Like when I first came into the league, for instance, like Pete Carroll going to Seattle, he kind of invented a new form of cover 3. And at the beginning, everyone thought it was cover 4. And I know even just saying this is, you have to break that down. But eventually you got to see, like, hold on a second, they've actually cheated cover 3, and they're cheating the safety one way, and they're playing zone to that side, and then they're manning this side. And it took a while to people to understand. So, if the people playing and coaching, are just taking time to figure that out, I can only imagine what the media's perspective is. And, sometimes, look, I've dealt with a lot of great media members. I mentioned Mike Reese before. There's a lot of guys who are willing to learn. And then I watch a lot of people who just make stuff up. And it's clear as day to us players that they have no idea what they're talking about. And so when a guy like you comes over and asks for me to describe, hey, what's going on with the offense, I think it's important to be honest and upfront and educate you with, what it is, because how else can you do your job?
Yeah, and it's funny because there's granular stuff about cover three, cover four, zone, lock and combo. Mayo used to
Yep.
do this with me. I'd be like,
Yeah.
wait, I don't need all that. And then
Yeah.
there's the esoteric stuff about what's happening on first down that's leading to 2nd and 9.
Right.
And it's very, you have to know the audience. And
Hmm.
that's, I want to ask you about knowing your audience and your time here and the end of your time here, because, I remember in 2022, as things were going tough, and you said it's tough here right now.
Hmm.
What do you remember about the 2022 season, and why did it go so sideways for the offense?
Yeah, well, I think obviously, you guys witnessed it as training camp went on, and I think there was a lot of shifts trying to take place, and there was shifts trying to take place with kind of no clear path. I guess that's the best way I would put it was, you were trying to get away from the system that had been run here for so long, but there also wasn't anyone who had been in another system that was trying to implement there. I guess basically, look, I've played in a lot of different offenses. And what we were trying to do that year was kind of a hodgepodge of a bunch of different things without a
Mhm.
clear cut person who had ever run those things before. And I think that frustrated a lot of people, especially guys who had played in that offense for a long time. Because I would say this, it was a blessing and a curse to be coached by Josh McDaniels for as long as we were, because Josh demanded so much out of you that you had to learn the ins and outs of everything and the reasons and the rules. And when you go from that to a system that really doesn't have a solid foundation, it doesn't have a lot of rules and all those things, the guys who have been coached that way for so long, we were kind of looking at like, well, how do you want us to do this? And
Mhm.
it was funny, the guys who had never really been in that system before, they didn't know the difference. You know what I mean? Like they were like, oh, this is just what it is. But the guys who had been educated in Josh's system for so long, you know, I was saying before, like talk about the dynasty, you talk about like the first Super Bowl, and I've seen Tom has shown me the call sheet from that Super Bowl. He still has it, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, God, I wish I could have learned the offense when it was like this, as opposed to learning it in your ninth and tenth
You mean
year
like
where it had
that
Yeah.
thick, the book, as opposed
Well,
to?
not even I'm talking about the sheet of the plays that were being called. It might have had 80 plays on it. And I remember going into games where we had 130 plays, which half of those were two plays in one call. And that kind of just goes to show you where they were able to take it because of Tom's intelligence and his work ethic, and then the players around him being smart. The offense just continually evolved and got, I would say, more difficult as opposed to when it was, under Charlie Weiss. So I say all that to say, guys who had played here for a long time under Josh, it was a very complicated system, but it almost gave you the power to understand more than your opponent.
Mhm.
And when you pull that back, I noticed it when I left New England to go play in other places, and I would get coached, and I'm like, that's it. That's all I have to do. I just have to say the cadence and hand the ball off. I don't have to point the mic out. I don't have to. It was almost paralyzing in a way, because when you're conditioned to do it that way, it's hard to take that power away from the players. And I think that was a big thing. And I always say this about Mac Jones. His rookie year, I was convinced that people were telling him the answers to questions in the room, or they were giving him the script on the field, because I had never seen someone that young learn that offense so quickly. I mean, it took me 3 years to get to where he was at the end of training camp.
Mhm.
And that to me, it was a blessing and it was a curse, because once Josh left, anybody who came in was not going to be I mean, I shouldn't say anybody. A lot of people who were going to come in weren't going to be at the point were able to coach him at that high of a level where he was, and he's an intelligent guy, so he
Yeah,
questions a lot of things.
and that's.
And
I
right,
remember him at camp saying, Brian, I like to know the why of it,
right.
and I think that's like with a kid, and when he starts to grow up a little bit and he's 9, 10, or 11 years old, and he starts asking his parents why, and they say, because I said
Hmm.
so, that's the
Right.
kid is still going to walk away and go, that's.
Well, and,
I've
and with
always
the
thought that
success that he had.
Bill's heart was in the right place, or at least his mind was in the right place, and saying, all right, Tom's gone, Josh is gone. We have an offense here that's unbelievably difficult to understand. We got kids coming in from college
Yep.
whether it's N'Keal Harry or Jacoby Myers, God bless him, he was a quarterback, so maybe that's part of the reason he learned it quicker. But your Taylor Prices, the guys that you came in with,
Sure.
they
Yeah.
couldn't get it.
Yeah.
So his heart was in the
And
right
and
place.
I'm
And say,
biased. I mean, I'm
let's make
biased
it
because
easy.
I'm biased because as the quarterback, I have to know it all. We have to know it all. And really, when you got to the, like I talked about, when you learned the foundation, it really wasn't. I mean, I would say some other offenses, which are considered quote unquote easier, were harder for the quarterback. They might have been easier for the other players, but there were certain things that made it harder for the quarterback, whether it was really long play calls, whether it was lack of the ability to get out of a bad play. I think, look, there's nothing to debate here. Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time, and the system evolved because of what he was capable of doing, and because he was on such a high level and had such a great work ethic. I mean, the sky was the limit. He could. I remember going into the Super Bowl against the Eagles, and talking about breaking stuff down.
Hmm.
With Schwartz as the defensive coordinator, they had a certain, in 3rd and 6 to 9, we called it the danger zone, and they could either play man, zone, or they could blitz zero. They could all out blitz, and there wasn't really a beat on what they could do. And so we decided to go in by having 3 play calls in one for all of those plays on 3rd and 6 to 9. There was a man beater, there was a zone beater, and there was a blitz zero alert. And when I mentioned that to other people who have never been a part of that system, they're like, "What?" And I go, "Yeah, it was nothing to us.
How did that work when you get to the line? You don't call that in the huddle? You get to the
No, so you,
line,
you
you still
call
have
that in the
those three
huddle. You
options.
call it. We would call like a play. Like it would be like, I don't know. I'm just gonna make a play up it in the. It would be like gun trips right, or gun target right. 64, Tar Heel, alert Pluto Reed, kill tornado. So the alert would go to the second play. That would be for zone, and then the kill would be for a blitz zero play. And I mean, to Tom Brady and to the guys that were playing on that offense,
Yeah,
that
the
was
guys
nothing.
too.
But
Like we know
that was,
Brady's a
I mean,
friggin' genius, but
yeah, but we had Amendola and you had Chris Hogan and you had Gronk and you had the line. I mean, the line that have played for the Patriots over the years are some of my favorite teammates because of their willingness and ability to learn all of that stuff.
it's insane.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
it just shows you like what, if one guy's capable of doing it and he works really hard at it, everybody else is going to do it too.
how difficult was it for you in 22 as they transitioned and you saw Mac going from a kid who was a wonderkind to now struggling to find the answers? How difficult was it for you to watch?
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, I wanted to be supportive. I really, had a great relationship with Mac, and because Josh had left, I felt like he leaned on me a lot on, a lot of, what I was thinking, not only because I knew that system, but because I had been in a lot of other systems too. And I saw the similarities, to the West Coast that we were trying to tie in. And I had been in that system. So and to the credit, Mac, with all the different coordinators that have gone through Alabama, it's kind of become a hodgepodge of like the Patriots system, the West Coast system, and the RPO. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's what the idea was. And but I don't think there was anyone who, you know, could put the vision to paper and then explain it and then have us go out and do it. I think that was the tough part.
Was it hard for you to not say stuff and say this isn't really helping?
I mean, it was hard, but I tried to be, the way I looked at it was I was so proud of being a Patriot and cared so much about the organization that I was worried that it was going to, and so it was more out of concern. It wasn't, if we want to do this, like I've done this in San Francisco and Cleveland, like I think we got to look at doing it this way. Or it was never like this isn't, we can't do it this way. It's kind of like, well, I remember bringing in a bunch of my Kyle Shanahan playbook stuff and showing it to Matt and Bill and being like, here's, you can have, this is what it is. This is how they
Mhm.
do it. And because look, I played really well in that system. It utilized my skills where it was play action passes, boots, all those things. I was excited about to incorporate that into an offense here, and I wanted to do whatever I could to help make it work.
And in the end, you end up with the Raiders after the 2022 season, and in 2023 you go with Josh.
Yep.
Was it time to go maybe from
Yeah,
New
I
England?
mean, honestly, I got a call from Coach Belichick, and he told me that I should retire. So I wasn't ready to retire, and I knew that I could still play, and so it was nothing more gratifying than to go out there and then come in and beat the Patriots this year. I mean, it was bittersweet. I remember being really emotional after that game because those were the guys I consider my brothers. I love those guys. I mean, to come up after the game and see the love that was still there, it was an odd feeling, but it was definitely, justification in my mind that I had made the right decision to continue to play.
You've had a fascinating career when you think about,
Yeah, ask my
where you
wife what
came
she
in.
thinks about this career.
Well, no, I know. I can only. How many kids do you have, Bry?
We have two. Yeah.
And they're probably,
Yeah.
pushing.
My son will be 12,
I was
and
going to
so
say double
he's,
digits.
yeah, my daughter's just turned 10. So it's like it's at a certain point, you got to think about them and their lives too. Like I remember going into seventh grade and playing tackle football and what that entails. And so, there's as you get older, there's other aspects. I remember Tom saying this too, like as you get older, your life changes and that change, affects your ability to go out there and just when it's easy, when you're young and it's just you and then you got a wife, and even when the kids are young they don't know any different. It's like, all right, I'm a 3 or 4, I moved from one house to another, but
Hmm.
this is getting to the point where it really affects them.
You saw how things went for Mac this year. Is it better for the Patriots and for Mac to cut bait at this point?
I mean, look, I felt, from afar, and obviously maintaining relationships with a lot of these guys, I felt for them. And I could just see it, when you'd see the highlights and you'd see the things, you could just see that it wasn't going well for them. Look, we talked about my career. I've had opportunity to be in a place, go well, have it not go well. Sometimes a new place is what you need for both people. Um, I talked about this on Good Morning Football the other day because oddly enough, with me and Jason being on there, like, let's talk about the Patriots offseason, what they should do. And I will always stick up for Mac because I believe I saw what he did as a rookie. I know what he's capable of. So I kind of went out and said, hey, with that third pick, if the top two guys are already taken, why not take a Marvin Harrison Jr. and try to help him out and bring someone in for him to compete with? I'm not by any means saying you give him the job.
Hmm.
That's not what it is, and I don't think that's what he's looking for. But in a way, it's a fresh start. It's Gerard has obviously been around, but I think, and I'll say this, I said it the other day, I'm so excited and happy for Gerard because, I not only did I play with him, but then he came back and I got to witness him coach and see how the guys felt about him. So in a way, even though he's been here, it is a very new regime and he's going to put his spin on it. So um, I think it could go either way. I think him going to a new place could be good for him, but I also think, it's a new head coach, it's a new thought process, a new way that they're going to run the program. Bring somebody in with, a veteran guy that he can compete with and let it go where it may and give whoever ends up being the quarterback. I mean, when you watch Marvin
Yep.
Harrison Jr. film, I mean, it is I had to watch a lot more than I usually would getting prepared to do this show the other day. I mean, the guy is incredible and clearly like the DNA and having grown up around it, like he's going to come in and I don't think there's been a receiver more NFL ready, at least in my 15 years, probably even going back further.
I look at that and say, well, the Patriots are so bad offensively. They have $58 million allocated. That's 32nd in the NFL towards their offense. They don't have a wide receiver except for Demario Douglas, who would start at his position on any other team, in my estimation. They have one
Hmm.
running back in Stevenson. Demario, like I said, Demario Douglas. David Andrews is a good center. There's so many.
Yep.
They don't have a tight end on the roster.
Right.
So I don't think they deserve a quarterback right now. I
Yeah.
think
I
that
mean,
they got to take
what?
their medicine and build elsewhere. And I think that part of it is they should trade down and
Yeah.
add resources because you're going to sit Jaden Daniels or Drake May in front of a firing squad, or you're going to waste a year of his rookie contract with someone like Jimmy
Sure.
or Jacoby Brissett out there taking the slings and arrows. Your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, look, you've obviously been around the game for a while. I mean, there's so much that goes into it, and I don't envy that position because, you know, okay, it's a third pick. They were saying on the show the other day, I don't think they've had this high of a pick since they drafted Drew Bledsoe.
Correct.
So, I mean, it's obviously a huge decision. Which way do you go? Who knows? Maybe they fall in love with a guy and he's there, and you say, you know what? We're going to put him through the fire and he's going to play. I mean, that's happened for other quarterbacks. Or even if you do draft a guy and you let him compete with, whether it's a Mac or you go in a different direction and sign a Jacoby Brissett, which I was just golfing with down in Florida. I mean, he would obviously be a prime candidate.
Would he want to come here? Did he
I
unveil
didn't
down
get
the
that.
16th?
My media hat wasn't on that day, so I didn't interrogate him. But that's my fault. But it's like, well, which direction do you want to go in? As you mentioned, you know, so deficient in a lot of places. Like, where do
Yeah.
you want to put the money, and how is that going to work out? Like I said, I don't envy that position, um, but there's a lot of ways you could take it.
What kind of pressure would a rookie quarterback face here in New England specifically?
Well, I think next year probably not very much. I mean, what are the expectations? And it's like I said, it's a new regime. It's Gerard's first year. Um, I don't think, the ghost of Tom's, footsteps or shoes, that I mean, that's kind of long gone. You know what I
Floated
mean?
away.
It's floated away. And Mac did it as a rookie, and that I would say there'd be less expectation for a rookie here next year than there was Mac's rookie year.
What would you look for in a quote unquote bridge quarterback? A Brian Hoyer. And do you take
Yeah.
it? Do you take offense at that when you're looked at as a backup quarterback or a spot starter when that's used as a
I mean, the way I look at it, look, I've been a quote unquote bridge starter for three different teams.
yeah?
I mean, I've made a good career out of it. It's something that motivates you, no doubt. But the reality is if you're a team signing a free agent quarterback, it's because you don't have one, and you're probably not a very good team. If teams that are decent, they either have a franchise, quote unquote, franchise quarterback who they're never going to let hit free agency, or they've drafted someone who's in their first 3 years. So, going to Cleveland and doing that there, um, you know, that was part of the role. And we had a good run. It kind of fizzled out, but then I go to Houston, the same thing, get to the playoffs, and I've said this a million times. I had a good year, kind of tumultuous year, get benched for Mallet, come back in, then have a concussion, come back, go to the playoffs, and then I had the worst game of my athletic career, going back to even Little League baseball. I've never had a performance that bad, and then they move on from you. But then another chance came in San Francisco, and I was a quote unquote bridge guy there.
Mhm.
And that led me back to New England because of the Jimmy G trade. And then I would say at that point I was basically relegated to being a backup, and that's okay too. Like, I took a lot of pride in being Tom's backup for as many years as I did, and then being shifting to that, that being a backup to Tom is not being the same as being a backup to Mac
Right.
Jones.
Of
And so
course.
that kind of shifted the dynamic, and that's an honor to do that too, because that means people respect you enough to be able to say, hey, if he has to play, we feel confident in him, but we also know he's going to help these young guys learn how to be a pro, learn how to prepare, and use his knowledge that I've accumulated all over these years to kind of impart on those guys. And I took a lot of pride in that. And going to Vegas to back up Jimmy was kind of a similar thing.
It's an unbelievable resource. And that's why I look at the Patriots quarterback room. If they're bringing in a rookie, whether it be Williams, Daniels, or May, you have
Yep.
to have a Yoda who
Yeah.
is non who is
Well,
not
how about like a Joe Flacco, who's worked with Alex Van Pelt, or I know Jacoby has was in Cleveland with Alex Van Pelt. So I think if you're looking, you're gonna try to find someone who has a relationship with the offensive coordinator. I mean, that just seems obviously, it's
easy.
kind of obvious to me. Yeah.
Yeah, you get now you have a lieutenant. You get a whatever they call it. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
that inclined.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Whoever your quarterback whisperer will be. What do you think of Alex Van Pelt? You've been in the league long enough where he was probably still playing at the time you were drafted.
I don't think I'm that old, but no, it's obviously a good chance for a guy to finally get, offensive coordinator position where he's going to call plays. And I know Jacoby really likes him. I've heard him say that over the years. So, it's a great opportunity for a guy who's coming in, obviously a situation we talked about is clearly a new regime.
I'm going to segue real quick too. The NFLPA survey of players came out, and the Patriots got murdered on multiple fronts. You were also in Vegas. One of the big sticking points with the Patriots was their facilities, family structure in terms of the way families are treated and housed, and the amenities for them, and also weight room and training situation. Vegas, meanwhile, was off the charts in terms
Yep.
of facilities. When you saw those results come out, first for the Patriots, what was your reaction?
I mean, look, I kind of always take all this with a grain of salt. I know the NFLPA is doing it to help free agents. I don't know if it's ever intended for the media to get a hold of and then nitpick and analyze. And also, I think if you give an anonymous survey, you don't know where people hold grudges and how it's gonna. I also look at it like it's kind of our society, right? It's a way to take shots at people without putting your name on it. I mean, are there certain things? Is the facilities in Las Vegas better than New England? Yeah, because it just got built a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But clearly, you know, I got it was someone was joking yesterday, like the ownership got a terrible rating in Kansas City. Well, they just won the Super Bowl. So I guess you got to look at it like, what does it really matter? Like what matters to you? Is winning matter to you? Is your family being taken care of matter to you? And the reality is like a lot of people sign places because of the money. It's not because of the facilities. It's not because it's there's different reasons for different people. So I mean, I take it with a grain of salt. To me, as a 15-year vet, like some of that stuff I could care less about.
Right.
But if you're a
But
young guy, maybe it matters more to you. I don't know.
here's the thing. I've been calling this a suck tax. The Patriots have to pay a suck tax right now because they were 4-13. If you're a free agent, you're going to look and go, okay, it's cold. There's a millionaire's tax.
Yep.
There's a 5% income tax.
Yep.
I'm not sure exactly what they're doing on
Well,
offense.
and I hate to say it, but there's no Tom Brady, which I think attracted a lot of people over the years, not just offensive players, but defensive players, guys who, I think you get to a certain point in your career where you've made enough money and it's like, well, if I only have a few years left of this, I want to win. And
Mm-hmm.
I think you saw a lot of that with a lot of guys who came here. It was like Tom Brady is the quarterback. I have a chance to be playing in the Super Bowl. And
Did the
so I
same
think,
exist? Sorry. Did the
yeah, I
same
think
exist with
that's
Bill?
um I don't know, hard to tell. I mean, look, I think you look at the year, what was it, 2021 max rookie year? It was a huge haul, but you had to pay a lot of money. You got Judon, you got Mills, you got Kendrick Bourne, Nelson
Hunter.
Aguilar. I mean, Hunter, that was a lot of money spent. So obviously it wasn't all Tom there, but there was also a point where you're now paying guys top market dollar to come.
So all that said, if you're going to have to spend a lot in free agency, and you do, and you're going to have to buy tackles most likely, and they're not miles and miles and miles away, but you have to hit on virtually everything in a way that they weren't able to do in 2021. All that aside, look at those three quarterbacks. Which one would you think is skill wise the best fit for the weather
Hmm.
here in New England?
Yep. Are you talking about the rookies?
Yes, yes, those three
Yeah.
top rookies, or even if you like Penix and Nix and
No,
McCarthy.
no. I mean, because of look. I hate to say it, but I don't even like enjoy watching college football anymore
I love it. Me too.
because it's become such a joke. It's just like 7-on-7, and as a quarterback, I love it. But then I look at them like I'm watching these guys. The other day preparing to do this show, and it's like there's not much of a pass rush. The coverage is not very good. But
There's
to be honest with
miles
you, yeah,
of space to throw to guys.
that's right. Watching those, I watched Penix, May, Daniels, and Caleb Williams, which look, the reality is probably, two of those guys won't be available to the Patriots unless they were to trade up. But I actually came away really liking the LSU guy, Daniels. I kind of just assumed by his stats that he was kind of like this dual threat guy. And the more I watched him, he sits in the pocket. It actually, maybe I was just seeing the LSU uniforms, and I'm like, this guy kind of looks like Joe Burrow when he's dropping back to pass, and the way he throws, but then he would take off for like a 50-yard run. And you're like, geez, like it's almost like Lamar Jackson
Mm-hmm.
esque. Do those skills translate to the cold? I don't know. I think also I played with Cam Newton, and Cam was the biggest quarterback that I've ever seen and still took a pounding. So if you're going to play that, type of style, how long? I mean, Anthony Richardson for the Colts, he got knocked out this year with the shoulder. I mean, the guys on defense in the NFL are a lot different than the guys in college, and the hits that you take. I'll never forget Isaiah Simmons playing for the Cardinals hit Cam on the sideline. You maybe remember in the COVID year, got a 15-yard penalty, allowed us
Yeah.
to win the game. And he hit Cam from the white all the way to the bench. And I'm thinking to myself, if I had gotten hit like that, I would never get back up. And here's Cam at 260, whatever, and he's taking these hits. I mean, those hits add up. And so the only thing I looked at with Jaden Daniels is he seems very skinny when I'm watching him on the tape. I mean, obviously he's at the combine this year. Maybe he'll weigh in and he'll put some weight on. But I actually really liked his style of play, and of all the guys that he kind of was my favorite. I mean, the Caleb Williams guy, you see so much of Patrick Mahomes. It's kind of uncanny the way how similar they are. But I don't think there's any opportunity to get him anyways.
Which brings me to intangibles. And I look at the guys who are taken in the top five, whether it's Sam Darnold or Zach Wilson or Trey Lance, who you may or may not have. No, you didn't cross paths with Vince Sanford.
Nope.
Or Mac, or Baker Mayfield, or Johnny Manziel.
Yeah.
The intangibles are absolutely vital. because if you don't have the right intangibles for an individual, and I think that Mac did have the intangibles, but it was put into a situation that was so adverse that eventually the intangibles melted. The fire got too hot and he was asked to do too much. And the resilience, it was
Yeah.
just a lot.
It was
Anyway,
it was hard to watch and be around because you could see, you know, Mac's greatest talent is in his head, his thought process, his brain, his mentality. I think that was kind of taken away from him. And at that point, it's like, you know, when you make it a physical thing, he's not Josh Allen, which, you know, my worst kept secret is I think Josh Allen is the most talented quarterback in the NFL.
mhm.
But there's a guy, you look at Josh Allen, you mentioned intangibles, but it's also situation. You know, Josh Allen went to the Buffalo Bills. They were an okay team. He waited for a little bit. He came and played. He took his, you know, his lumps. He learned and he got better. And he got to the point where he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. Same thing with Patrick Mahomes, who goes to the Chiefs. It's a pretty good team, and Alex Smith is there for a year, and he took that year and then just ran with it. Even a Justin Herbert, who, you know, didn't go there as a starter right away, and I think those three guys are the top 3 quarterbacks, you know, give or take in there, and then even with Joe Burrow, you know, you look at
Or
the guys that
Jackson,
yeah, or Lamar
Lamar,
Jackson. Those
same
are
thing.
all good teams that they're going to, good players around them, which I think as a quarterback, everybody, you know, look, I felt this. Everyone wants to pin the wins and losses on you, but the reality is it's about the team around you. And if you go, I mean, I would say Mac's rookie year, we had a really good team.
And I think that the adversity that you're going to get when you go to a 4-13 team with a new coach,
Yep.
with a new system, is going to be
Yep.
so significant that your network around you, your family, they want the best for you. And they're going to tell you they're screwing you, you're
Right.
hosed, or why
Yep.
aren't you playing, or how come that guy? And it's hard for a 22-year-old, especially in this climate now where I think that people are more attuned
Totally.
to the outside noise.
Yeah.
It
Not only
that
that,
I
but they also want to be told how great they are. And I'm not saying this about Mac at all, but I think it's a generational thing that I've witnessed. I feel like I'm dating myself here, but um, you know, me as a player, all I want from a coach is prepare me to win on Sunday. You know, you can rip me, you can do whatever. And I think that was the culture in New England. We were all used to it. You know, they talk about these low light tapes and all that stuff, but we all went through it together. And in the end, I think we all knew that our coaches were doing the best job they could do to prepare us to win. And it wasn't always pretty. It wasn't always fun. It wasn't always happy, but I'll tell you what, winning was fun. And those Sundays winning the game and, you know, being a part of a Super Bowl team, like that was fun. And that just takes a perspective. Whereas I think, you know, now you have kids coming in making millions of
10
dollars in
million.
college.
Caleb Williams is 10
yeah,
million.
you're gonna put me on the film and say I didn't do a good job. Well, you didn't do a good job. Just take it, learn from it, and get better. I mean, I dreaded when those lights would go off and Bill would be sitting at that table ready to go through the film. Your heart's racing, thinking, man, what play did I have in practice yesterday that's going to be on this tape? And sometimes you get out scot clean and you knew you had one. But there's other times where I'd be sitting there and being like, yeah, there's nothing that I could be on here for. And then all of a sudden it'd be you. I'm like, I mean, what are you doing here? And, but that made me a better player. And if anything, it brought us together closer as a team because I think you knew that you never wanted to let down the guy next to you. And you never wanted to be called out in front of those guys. Those are your teammates, your brothers. They're depending on you. And in a way, I've never been on a closer team than those teams I was on in 17 and 18 that went to the Super Bowl. I mean, the closeness of the guys on that team was even, I would say, even better than some of my college years because it was just everybody was in it for each other and
Mm-hmm.
was going through it together. And it was a special, I mean, like I mentioned before, going on the show with Jason McCourty, like I could call up any of those guys on that team and have a conversation and reminisce and have good memories. And I can't say that about every team over 15 years in the NFL.
Funny in the dynasty, which you'll see, there's a comment from Danny Amendola, who was so instrumental on the 17
Hmm.
team, that we played for Tom. We worked for Bill. We played for Tom. Was there that kind of, and I'm watching Band of Brothers right now, 20 years too late, but was there that kind of, hey, we have a very, very difficult to please drill sergeant. He treats us all the same way, which builds the chemistry and
Yeah.
camaraderie within the group where F that guy, we're going to do well anyway.
Yeah, 100%. But I always think you always knew that Bill was game planning and had the direction to know that what it took to win that game. And then it was
Mhm.
our job to take that information and then go out and execute it. And usually he was right. He'd come in and say, these are the three things we need to do to win this game. And if we did those three things, we won the game. And if we didn't, then we probably lost. Um, you know, I'll never forget my rookie year. After the first OTA, we come in and it's the lights go off. I don't know what's going on. It's the first low light session. And the first play, I'll never forget this. Tom tried to throw a seam to Wes Welker. And he goes, Tom, what are you doing? You're trying to throw. It's like trying to hit an ant 30 yards downfield. Try to throw to the smallest guy 30 yards down the field. Why don't you just throw to the guy over the ball? And I remember thinking, like, I'm never going to make the NFL. I'll never make it. Like and it was a good throw. He didn't get completed, but I was like, I'll never make this team. If that's what the expectations are, like it'll never work. But I think that showed what a great leader Tom was because he took it. He never
Mhm.
said anything. And when you see the guy who's the greatest player taking that, everybody falls in line. And if you don't, you're probably not there for very long. And he set such a good example and for so long that you know it was like if that was the bar for him, then that was the bar for everybody. And I think, his ability to, take that and never argue it and be gracious about it, I think that in, endeared himself to a lot of people
Mhm.
and no one wanted to let him down.
Until and then and I gotta let you go. We've been going on here, but until he couldn't,
Right.
until 17 and 18, he's like, I'm going to take this, but I'm still not going to get a contract. We're
Sure.
still going to go year to year, but that's for another time. And because I don't want to keep you too long, so I can
Yeah.
ensure that we will have another time. I'm
Okay.
not going to monopolize it. So the next time I text you, you don't go, oh, this guy's an hour and a half
No,
operation.
I
No way.
enjoyed talking to you, Tom. I mean, it's fun and obviously we have a lot of years together and a lot of stuff we could always talk about. But no, I mean, I was joking. Scott Pioli was on Good Morning Football the other day, and after we did our questions, he kind of hung on the Zoom. We were talking about the dynasty, and I've only seen the first episodes. I can't wait to get to the episodes where I was actually there and on those teams. But
Well,
I
yeah.
was thinking to myself, like I have a kind of unique perspective because I kind of came in the lull in between the Super Bowl runs. And then my last year here, my first stint was when we lost to the Giants. And then I left for 5 years and then I came back and right in the heat of, the second Super Bowl run. And then I got to see the post Tom Brady era into, like we mentioned, 2022. And so I think the only other player who would be even more insightful would be Matt Slater because he was there consistently for 16 years through all of that. And to see, the ups and downs and the ins and outs. And, I'm just excited to watch that show and see when it gets to those years because when you've lived it, it's kind of interesting to see like the perspective from the outside and how it's portrayed in a show like that.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. You're going to enjoy it. And we're actually doing a Dynasty post-game show every Friday
Okay.
night on NBC Sports Boston, in which we rehash the two episodes. This week's episode with the Matt Castle season after Tom
Okay.
Brady's ACL, and then the Aaron Hernandez
Yep.
episode is pretty wrenching, which
So you've been able to watch it already? You had like a
I
sneak peek.
have because I
Yeah.
contributed to it. So they wanted to
Okay.
send it along and give us a chance to
Yep.
look at some of them. So
Yeah.
the Hernandez one, which you were there for,
Yep.
is really eye-opening. And I'd love
Yeah.
to maybe soon get your input on that, unless in advance you have some. I mean, that
No,
must
I
have been.
mean, I wasn't there when I had left, but I had played with Aaron
Oh, okay.
for 2 years. So I
Right.
wasn't there when all of the chaos was going on. But it was to me, it was heartbreaking because I remember my thoughts of Aaron was probably one of the best football players I ever played with. Clearly, had issues and they would come out in strange ways, but when he was on that football field, it was a thing of beauty, and so much lost from that situation because not only was he a great player, but he could go all day. He would come to the scout team and play Calvin Johnson, then he'd go back to the other and catch four balls in a period, and it was like nothing. He loved it. It was joy to him, and so what a heartbreaking story all the way around. A bunch of lives that were just lost due
Mhm.
to poor decisions. But yeah, it's sad, but for another time we talk more about it too.
Yeah, definitely would like your perspective on that. And those two episodes are coming up. I think they're released later today on Thursday on Apple TV, and we will have
All
the
right.
Dynasty post-game show. Brian, This was fantastic. We are 1,000,000% doing this again, but you continue to be an active NFL player. So I defer to the Raiders.
No worries. We'll figure it out.